Welcome to the Parallel World Library, where we explore strange and fascinating stories in other dimensions. Now, let's relax your body and take your mind to another world. Number 13, Mink Street, by TunaV. Chapter 29, Secular Demon.
That's Grandfather Dis!
The feeling of one's heart about to jump out of their throat turned out not to be an exaggeration because Sylvan was experiencing this sensation right now. When he looked at the child's drawing and recognized the identity of the killer in the picture, he breathed rapidly.
Murderer!
Standing at the door, who knows since when, and even responding, A gentle sound, but to Sylvan's ears it was like a thunderclap. Sitting on the bed, Sylvan straightened his back, his whole body immediately standing up. At the same time, the notebook in his hand closed.
Were you just calling me?
Dis asked.
Yes, I had something.
Dis nodded.
I was also looking for you about something.
What a coincidence, Grandfather.
Come to my study.
Yes, Grandfather.
Dis turned and left. When he heard the sound of the study door opening, Sylvan immediately opened the notebook, tore out each page, and crumpled them into a ball. Sylvan glanced at a glass of milk on the table, hesitated momentarily, but finally stuffed the paper ball into his pocket, abandoning the idea of swallowing it. After leaving the bedroom, Sylvan entered Dis's study. Dis's study was no different from an ordinary study, with nothing particularly luxurious or unique about it. The chandelier in the middle of the study was lit, but Sylvan remembered that night in the study, Dis had only lit a single candle. Dis sat behind the desk while Sylvan pulled up a chair and sat down naturally. At least, it seemed that way. For now, Sylvan could only put aside thoughts about the drawing. First, he had no emotional attachment to these parents. Even in Sylvan's memories, the impression of his parents was almost vague. So, whether the cause of Sylvan's parents' death was true, as depicted in the drawing, was irrelevant to him. Moreover, what he needed to do now was to protect his own life.
Should you speak first, or shall I?
Dis asked.
You go first, Grandfather.
Your uncle told me about today and said he wanted to arrange a new position for you in the company. Have you now become so bright that you can help others alleviate their sorrows?
Sylvan replied,
It's because I've been through a long period of suffering, so I know how to listen and have learned to comfort others.
Are you willing to do this kind of work?
I am.
Why?
Because I'm part of the Inmarace family. If I have this ability, I'm willing to help the company and everyone in the family.
The church on Mint Street recently has a vacant deacon position. This position might be more suitable if you want to support and enlighten others.
I don't want to be a deacon in the church.
Oh, why not?
I want to work from the perspective of my identity, not in the name of some deity.
Isn't it the same?
It's very different.
How is it different?
I feel that the relationship between family members is innate, not given by God. Between family members, we don't need a deity as a catalyst.
Go on.
Uncle Mason needs money, Aunt Mary needs money too, and after Aunt Winnie's divorce, she needs money as well.
The family doesn't lack money.
But the family doesn't have enough money yet.
I don't hope for my children's lives to revolve around making money, because money can never be earned enough. There are more meaningful things in life.
However, the vast majority of meaningful things are difficult to achieve without enough money.
Dis fell silent and Sylvan didn't speak either. After a long while, Dis broke the silence.
Do you like money?
Grandfather, I just said, Uncle, Aunt, including Minna, Lund, and Chris who are still growing up, all need money. What everyone in the family needs is what I want to strive for.
Dis reached out to take the teacup on the table. Sylvan stood up and took the hot teapot from the corner of the table.
Grandfather, do you need more tea?
Dis nodded. Sylvan poured hot tea, put down the teapot, and sat again.
Do you think you can earn enough money based on this? I know you earned 20,000 lu today. I'm inquisitive. Why was that gentleman willing to pay such a high fee?
Because he knows quality.
The problem lies here. Those who know quality are always a minority, and those who know quality, have money, and are willing to spend it are even fewer.
I'll think of other methods. I believe I can do it.
All right,
Dis sipped tea.
now tell me about your matter.
Grandfather, I want to return to studying.
Ah, you want to continue going to school?
Yes, Grandfather.
You just said you wanted to work for the family, to earn money for the family.
I don't need to go to school every day. I can help the family work while self-studying, but I need your help preparing for higher education.
Are you planning to take the university entrance exam?
I have that plan.
Which university do you want to enter?
St. John's University in Wien. I've heard it's an excellent university in the world.
That's right. It's a recognized school. But do you think you can go there to study?
I feel that as long as I study seriously and keep trying...
No.
Dis interrupted Sylvan.
You've misunderstood my meaning.
What do you mean, Grandfather?
I'm old. After people get old, they like stability and seeing their children and grandchildren gathered around.
Sylvan was stunned. In his original thought, going to study in another country was also an excellent way to deal with the relationship between both sides. You know I'm not your grandson. You know that I've realized that you know I'm not your grandson. I take a legitimate reason to leave Luogia City, leave this Rulan country. In my perception, I finally left this house and I am free. In your perception, your grandson is actually still alive, just living far away. He still studies and can create distance and beautiful illusions. Isn't that good for both of us? Dis took another sip of tea and said,
I'm not at ease with you going far away.
But Grandfather, I'm already 15 years old. According to the customs of Luogia City, I'm an adult.
In my eyes, you're still just a child unless
Unless what?
I die.
Until I die, don't think about escaping from this place. Of course, you can choose to leave home and run away. You can try. Sylvan slightly parted his lips and took a deep breath. Then, the expression on his face changed from a bit of stiffness back to warmth. He stood up smiling and said,
Actually, I'd miss you too, Grandfather. Being able to stay by your side is still my greatest happiness.
Dis nodded, then looked at the study door, indicating the conversation was over, and you could leave. Sylvan turned towards the door, the gentle smile fading, leaving only a severe expression. When Sylvan reached the study door, Dis's voice came from behind.
Oh, right.
Sylvan immediately turned back, smiling and asking,
Grandfather, is there anything else?
The hospital has notified me that he's awake. Tomorrow I have business at the church. You go visit Mr. Hoffen for me.
All right, Grandfather. Thank God. God bless Mr. Hoffen. He's finally all right.
Get some rest early.
You too, Grandfather.
Chapter 30, Secular Demon 2. Lunt had finished brushing his teeth and was lying on the bed preparing to sleep. Seeing Sylvan return, he immediately sat up and reminded him.
Brother, Mom told me to remind you to eat your late-night snack.
All right, I know.
Sylvan saw the 300 lu under the glass of milk. Frowning slightly, Sylvan stepped forward to open the drawer, took out another 1,000 lu along with the 300, and went to Lunt.
Brother, I can't take your money.
Hold out your hand.
Brother,
Hold out your hand.
Lunt held out his hand. Sylvan placed the 1,300 lu in Lunt's hand, then lowered his head, bringing his face close to Lunt's, and said through gritted teeth,
You're not allowed to disobey.
Lunt pressed his lips together but finally nodded. Sylvan straightened up, suddenly realizing that venting the emotions he'd just experienced with Dis on Lunt was entirely inappropriate. So he reached out to pat Lunt's head gently, reassuring him.
Your brother knows how to make money. I don't lack pocket money. Don't let your mother know. Of course, don't spend it wastefully either.
yes, Lunt understands. Lunt will listen to brother.
Go to sleep.
Good night, brother.
Good night.
Sylvan sat back at the desk and turned on the desk lamp. He took out the paper from his pocket, wanting to unfold it, but after unfolding it halfway, he crumpled it back into a ball. He picked up the glass of milk and drank it all. Then he threw the paper ball into the glass, using a spoon to mash the paper. After doing this, Sylvan propped his hand on his forehead, recalling his grandfather's words from earlier.
I'm not at ease letting you go far away, unless I die.
So when will you finally go? Sylvan sighed helplessly, picking up the bread on the table and taking a big bite. In the end, this curse was still unspeakable. Although Dis had once wanted to kill him, well, he probably still wants to now. He hasn't killed him yet, and before he kills him, he's eating his food, drinking his drinks, and living in his house, so it really feels awkward to resent the other party. What else can be done? Sylvan opened his palm and mumbled a prayer.
May grandfather live to be 100 years old.
If Dis wouldn't let him leave, then he could only hope that Dis would live a long life. Because the inner meaning of Dis's words might have another layer of meaning. As Ron had said, he would spend his last loo before dying. What if one day Dis suddenly felt unwell, felt that time was running out? Then, before he goes, Sylvan licked his lips and self-mockingly said,
He'd probably take me with him.
In the study, the black cat Pal walked on the desk.
Always talking about making money for the family. Every word about family. How warm, how touching Dis. Does he bewitch you? He's just relying on the so-called family identity. He's just using this so-called affection to restrain you. He's saying these things to save his life. What's wrong, Dis? Do you believe what he says is true? Or are you deceiving yourself?
Dis sat there in silence. Pal continued to pace gracefully back and forth on the desk.
Look. Is this our esteemed Judge Dis? It seems our esteemed Dis has grown old, starting to forget his duties because of sentimental attachment. Dis, have you forgotten that you killed your son and daughter-in-law years ago? Why, now facing a grandson, you can't bring yourself to do it. And you don't just have this one grandson.
Dis's gaze finally fell on Pal. Under this gaze, Pal took a few small cat steps backward. At this moment, Dis opened his mouth and said,
Order. Cage.
Black lines radiated from Dis's body in an instant, enclosing the area around the desk and quickly forming a barrier.
Dis, what are you doing? You shouldn't act rashly. I'm waking you up, warning you, and helping you.
Dis's hand fell directly on Pal's back, pressing down with an oppressive force.
Ah!
Pal let out a miserable scream. The scream turned into a cat's cry.
Meow!
Looking at Pal suffering under the torture of his hand, Dis's face remained unchanged. He only asked indifferently,
Are you teaching me how to do my job?
Chapter 31, Secular Demon 3. There were no customers today. Minna, Lunt, and Chris had gone to school. Sylvan ate the breakfast prepared by Aunt Winnie, and after going downstairs, he saw Paul and Ron sitting in the garden chatting.
Good morning, young Master Sylvan.
Good morning, young Master Sylvan.
Ron was particularly enthusiastic because of the 500 loo from yesterday. Sylvan said to Paul,
Aren't you going anywhere today?
Paul shook his head.
Haven't received a phone call notification yet.
Ron said,
I think today should be a happy and relaxed day. Master Mason and Lady Mary are still not awake.
Uncle and Aunt were taking advantage of the house having nothing to do and lying in.
Paul, can you drive me to the hospital? I want to visit Mr. Hoffen on behalf of grandfather.
Of course, young master.
The Inmaraes family car might not be convenient for other places, but it was perfectly legitimate for places like the hospital. Once again, sitting in the car that made both the living and the dead uncomfortable, Sylvan sat down on the car floor and sighed.
Actually, we could get a new car.
After all, this car was a modified hearse. The dedicated type had a groove in the middle that could hold a coffin, fixed seats on both sides with armrests, and more space.
Master Mason has long wanted to change to a different car, but Lady Winnie doesn't agree.
Paul started the engine and the hearse began to move on Mint Street.
Paul, turn to the other side, the road ahead.
All right, young master.
However, just as Paul turned onto that road, Sylvan changed his mind.
Never mind, Paul, turn back. Let's go straight to the hospital without taking a detour.
All right, young master.
Paul showed no impatience. His temperament was indeed much better than Ron's. Of course, if you gave Ron a tip, Ron would immediately become extremely enthusiastic. Sylvan had initially intended to pass by his uncle's first love's house, conveniently glancing at that second-floor window, but thinking again that grandfather wasn't sitting in the car anyway, he'd better abandon this idea in his head. About 10 minutes later, Paul drove into the hospital parking lot.
Young master, I'll wait for you here.
All right.
Sylvan got out of the car and walked towards the inpatient building. As he stepped onto the stairs, he realized he was visiting a patient but hadn't even brought any fruit. Should he go out to buy some fruit or a bouquet and come back? After hesitating for a moment, Sylvan still found it troublesome and gave up.
Hello, may I ask which room is Mr. Hoffin's?
Mr. Hoffin, please wait a moment. I'll help you check.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The young nurse at the service desk was checking the patient list for the area. Looking up while checking, she evaluated Sylvan, the corners of her mouth slightly raised with a hint of a smile. Sylvan politely smiled back, patiently waiting. If he inherited this handsome appearance, then he could only accept the troubles that came with it. For example, wanting to look at him a bit more, this young nurse deliberately checked very slowly. Finally,
Found it. Mr. Hoffin is in room 301, bed number 2.
Thank you.
Do you need me to show you the way?
No need, thank you.
Sylvan went up the stairs to the 3rd floor. Room 301 was right at the top of the stairs, just up and there. Pushing open the door of the ward, inside were 2 hospital beds. One person lying on the bed was Mr. Hoffin. On the other bed was a middle-aged woman in a caregiver uniform sleeping soundly, snoring lightly, not even noticing when Sylvan pushed the door. Sylvan stepped forward, preparing to wake her up. At the same time, Mr. Hoffin's voice came,
She works 3 shifts. She's too tired. Let her sleep a bit more.
Sylvan turned back, looking at Mr. Hoffin lying on the hospital bed. His head had been bandaged, and before Sylvan came in, he was still reading the newspaper, seeming to have recovered quite well.
Knowing you woke up, I came to visit you immediately.
Sylvan came empty-handed, sitting down beside the hospital bed. The corners of Mr. Hoffin's mouth revealed a cold smile, saying,
I didn't fall to my death. You're very disappointed, aren't you?
Sylvan shook his head and frankly said,
If I wanted to, you probably wouldn't have had the life to come to the hospital.
Mr. Hoffin frowned slightly, puzzled, and said,
What's this, not even pretending now?
What needs to be pretended? I am Sylvan. Just that the illness before made my whole person change quite a bit. After all, I almost died from illness. It's quite normal for a person's personality to undergo some changes, isn't it?
I'm inquisitive. Why does Dis still let you continue to live?
I'm his grandson. Your words are very meaningless.
Don't you know what you really are?
I've said it. I am Sylvan.
Mr. Hoffin raised his neck, revealing the cross necklace inside.
Take it off.
All right.
Sylvan reached out and removed the cross necklace from Mr. Hoffin's neck. Mr. Hoffin stared at Sylvan and said,
I'm going to tell you now what you really are.
As expected of a professor of philosophy, I'm thrilled to discuss philosophy with you.
Take it.
What?
Use your hand. Hold the cross.
Sylvan looked at the cross necklace just removed from Mr. Hoffin's neck in his hand, not moving.
What's wrong? Don't dare.
It's not that.
Then try holding it. If you hold it, you can clearly know what you really are.
Mr. Hoffin, fortune-telling as a hobby is fine. It shouldn't go too deep. Otherwise, it will affect your life in reality.
If you are that thing, when you actively hold it, your soul will also be destroyed by it.
Are you telling a fairy tale?
Yes, then you grab it. Cooperate with me to continue this story.
Sylvan hesitated.
What are you hesitating about? You grab it. What's wrong? Are you even deceiving yourself? Ha ha ha. I don't know why Dis can continue to let you live. Perhaps he's also old.
Mr. Hoffen's eyes suddenly widened when he saw Sylvan sitting before him, holding the cross with his left hand. 1 second, 3 seconds, 10 seconds, half a minute. After holding the cross, Sylvan didn't move. Mr. Hoffen propped himself up on the hospital bed with both hands, struggling to stand up, but at this moment, Sylvan suddenly leaned forward, his mouth making a sound.
Boo!
Ah.
Mr. Hoffen was frightened, lost his balance, and fell back onto the bed, but his eyes still stared at Sylvan in disbelief. Sylvan tossed the cross necklace beside Mr. Hoffen's pillow, spread his arms, and walked around in a circle saying,
Wasn't it said that the soul would be destroyed? Look, how come nothing happened to me?
Impossible. This is impossible.
Mr. Hoffen began to mutter to himself.
You rest well. I'll come visit you again after a while. I hope by then this part of you can recover to be a bit more normal.
After saying this, Sylvan pointed at his temple.
Goodbye, Mr. Hoffen.
Sylvan left the ward.
How come the sacred object's purification didn't destroy his soul? Could it be that I was wrong? Is he really not a secular demon?
As he walked down the stairs, the nurse at the service desk smiled sweetly at Sylvan, and he smiled back. Leaving the inpatient building, going down the steps, Sylvan didn't go straight to the parking lot to find Paul, but went to a corner of the hospital garden, squatted down, his right hand covering his mouth, his left arm shaking almost frantically.
Fuck! It hurts like hell!
After waving his left hand for a while, Sylvan finally stopped, put his left hand in front of him, and slowly opened his palm. On his left palm, there was clearly a cross-shaped burn scar, but the wound seemed to have been cauterized, so there was no fresh blood flowing out. Looking at this burn mark, Sylvan fell into deep thought. After a long while, he let out a self-questioning sound.
So, what the hell am I?
This is the end of today's story. Please like and subscribe to support the channel and follow the next developments. Thank you.